Sara was a brave, feisty and spirited child. She was not submissive as you wanted her to be. She stood up to you. You considered that her behaviour entitled you to chastise her physically, and I have no doubt that your ego and sense of self-importance were boosted by the power that you wielded over her and the rest of the family.
The essence of who Sara Sharif was, a brave 10-year-old girl who stood up for herself in the face of unspeakable abuse, was laid bare by the judge today.
This poor child was battered with great force again and again.
Line by line, Judge Kavanagh gave a devastating account of the campaign of abuse orchestrated by her stepmother, father and uncle.
Sara's death was the culmination of years of neglect, frequent assaults, and what can only be described as the torture of this small child, mainly, but not entirely, at the hands of you, her father, Urfan Sharif.
Today, Urfan Sharif was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 40 years. His wife, Beinash Batool, was also sentenced to life and must serve 33 years. Sara's uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for causing or allowing the death of a child. There was no reaction here at the Old Bailey from the three defendants as they were being sentenced. They all kept their heads down. When Urfan Sharif was given his sentence, a member of the public cheered, and the judge reminded them to be quiet.
Please!
This marks the end of an extraordinary case which began after the chilling discovery of Sara's body at her home in Surrey on the 10th of August 2023. Urfan Sharif called police only once he'd fled to Pakistan with Beinash Batool, Faisal Malik and their other children. They stayed on the run and the judge said they were seeking to escape justice. He also pointed to what he called a bizarre video they released to the press at the time.
Sara's death was an incident. We are willing to cooperate with the UK authorities and fight our case in court.
But the pressure to give themselves up intensified as Pakistani police started to arrest and detain family members there. They returned over a month later. Sara's birth mother, who now lives in Poland, joined the hearing via a remote link. Her impact statement was read out in court, her words directed to Sara's killers.
I can't understand what's wrong with these people, how they allowed it. You are sadists. Although even this word is not enough for you, I would say you are executioners.
The judge said responsibility of Sara's death rested squarely with those who carried out the brutal acts of abuse. But, he said, the case inevitably raised questions about what more could have been done. It's unusual for judges to pass comment on public policy, but Justice Kavanagh took the time to raise issues about homeschooling and how it was that Sara was able to be taken out of school when serious concerns were being raised. In March of 2023, the school referred Sara to social services after they noticed bruising. A month later, her father told them she would be homeschooled. The last 4 months of her life was spent behind these walls. The judge said homeschooling was a ruse, part of Urfan Sharif's manipulation of authorities to hide the brutal crimes against his own daughter. Today, he faced justice for murdering Sara, as did Beinash Batool and Faisal Malik, a 10-year-old girl described by her mother as an angel, who was always smiling and had her own unique character.
So today, as a result of what happened to Sara Sharif, the government published new safeguarding measures in its Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Well, Aisha joins us now. What are they proposing, Aisha?
So, Matt, as I said in my report, the judge made that rare intervention, really, speaking about homeschooling. But the government has announced these measures today to try and stop vulnerable children from falling through the cracks, like in Sara's case. Let's have a quick look at what they're proposing. Parents will no longer have an automatic right to educate their children at home if their child is under a child protection plan or the subject of an investigation. Local authorities will have a new power to require any child to attend school if their home is deemed to be unsuitable or unsafe. New registers will be established to identify children who aren't in school, and all children will be given a unique identifier number. So that's similar to a national insurance number, and that's to link records across different services. Now, this is some of what campaigners have been calling for years, decades, but they've also been asking for a UK-wide ban on smacking, like in Scotland, like in Wales as well. And those are points that I put to the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, earlier today.
It's clear to me that the time for words, for talk of lessons learned is over. We need to act. There have been sadly too many cases where children have been failed by the state, and that's why what I'm setting out today before Parliament is a landmark piece of legislation that will keep children safe and will make sure that all of us work together to give children the best start in life.
Are you asking the Chancellor for more resources on this? Because that all sounds very well and good, but if you don't have the social workers in place, you don't have community paediatricians, you don't have police officers looking out for these children, again, these are just empty words.
I recognise the enormity of the scale in terms of what we've inherited. We know that our public services have been under enormous pressure over the last decade. That's why through the budget there was a record level of investment going into local councils with a ring-fenced, dedicated children's prevention support grant as a part of that to do a lot more to support children and families at the earliest possible point.
You know that councils are on their knees. There are figures bandied around all the time, 4 billion deficit. There's no way that they can afford to do this and afford to keep children safe in the way that you're suggesting.
They can't afford not to do it because what we're seeing at the moment is the price of failure. You know, billions of pounds being spent on a system that is delivering terrible outcomes for children, the ever-escalating cost of private placements. My primary focus is on better outcomes for children, but this will also bring down cost to councils. We can't continue with this trajectory of spend. It's ever spiralling and is pushing councils to the brink.
Why don't you include a smacking ban in this to really protect children? Can you hand on your heart say that this is the best legislation that you can offer right now?
This is a significant piece of legislation, a seminal moment in how we keep children safe. There have been far too many examples where the state has failed children, and often across those cases you see a range of very similar factors that will often involve domestic violence, and there's a lot more we have to do as a country to tackle domestic violence. It will often involve a failure to share information between different agencies involved in children's lives. What's impossible to eliminate is the fact that there will sometimes be dangerous, manipulative individuals who will seek to inflict serious harm on those children that they are responsible for. We can't stop that, but what we can do is intervene much more quickly to take action to protect children.
But then why not have a smacking ban?
We're not intending to legislate around smacking, and the cases that you have just described are incredibly serious and are about far more than smacking.
So smacking isn't serious?
Well, the cases that we're talking about are where there has been a serious, sustained pattern of violence and abuse that has often resulted in the death of a child. I do understand the calls from others to look closely at this. We will keep it under review. I want to look at the approach that has been taken in Wales and the impact that that has had. But I think there is a distinction to draw between what people call smacking and extremely serious cases where children have been subjected to unspeakable violence.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much indeed.